I exposed my coworker's bathroom habit to save the team, and it cost them their job. I worked with someone who, at first, seemed completely normal, friendly, responsible, and reliable. But over time, things started to change. This coworker began disappearing for long stretches of time, sometimes more than 30 minutes. When they returned, their behavior was off. They'd act dazed, distracted, and avoid interacting with the rest of the team. At first, I thought it was just stress or maybe some personal issues. But after a while, I started noticing a pattern. Something was wrong, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was clear that something was affecting their work. They would avoid ringing up customers, their drawer would be short on cash at the end of the night, or they'd overcharge customers. It wasn't just one or two mistakes. It was happening consistently. The strange behavior after coming back from the bathroom was the biggest clue. And then, one day, I stumbled upon the truth. My coworker wasn't just acting differently because of stress. They had a drug addiction, and it was starting to affect their work and the whole team. I knew something had to be done, but the decision wasn't easy. Should I cover for them and keep the secret, or should I expose what was going on, knowing it could cost them their job? I chose to expose it, and what followed was something I could never have predicted. This decision changed everything for my coworker, and even though it felt right at the time, it came with consequences that I had to face. I had worked with this coworker for a while, and at first everything seemed fine. They were friendly, competent, and did their job just like everyone else. But after some time, things started to shift. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone has bad days, right? But as the weeks went by, I started noticing more and more odd behavior. This coworker began disappearing for long periods. I'm talking about 30 minutes, sometimes even longer, and no one really knew where they went. It wasn't like a quick bathroom break or something normal. It was a noticeable, consistent absence. And when they'd finally return, it was obvious that something wasn't right. Their eyes were always dilated, and they seemed to have trouble focusing. They'd avoid engaging with customers or taking on any new tasks. The energy around them just felt off. They seemed out of it, like they were somewhere else mentally. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe they were just tired, maybe they were stressed. Who doesn't have those moments? But soon I realized it wasn't just the strange behavior. It was the little things that added up. The missing money at the end of the night, and how their cash drawer was always short. It wasn't just once. It was happening regularly. And sometimes, they'd make mistakes when ringing up customers, like overcharging people or mixing up the prices. Again, at first, I thought it was just human error. But the more it happened, the more I started to think there was something more going on. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Other coworkers began talking about it too. Everyone was confused and a little concerned, but no one could pinpoint what the problem actually was. Some thought maybe they were just slacking off, or maybe they were struggling with something personal. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling that it was something bigger, something that could cost us as a team if we didn't figure it out. I tried to push the thoughts aside, but the pattern was too clear to ignore. Something was going on with this coworker, and it wasn't just a simple case of bad days. One day, I reached my breaking point. I knew something was seriously off, but I couldn't figure out exactly what. It had been bothering me for weeks, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to get to the bottom of this. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. After one of their usual long bathroom breaks, I followed them. I know it sounds a bit extreme, but at that point, I needed answers. I waited until they were in the bathroom, and then I quietly followed behind them. I didn't want to make a scene, but I needed to understand what was really going on. When I stepped inside, what I saw immediately shocked me. On the sink, there was white powder. Not a lot, but enough to catch my eye. My heart started racing as I looked down and noticed something else on the floor, an unmistakable pill. It was Xanax. I couldn't believe my eyes. It felt like everything suddenly clicked into place. You see, I had taken Xanax for anxiety in the past, so I knew exactly what I was looking at. There was no mistaking it. The pill on the floor, the powder on the sink, it all pointed to one thing. My coworker had been using drugs in the bathroom. In that moment, everything I had noticed before, the odd behavior, the disappearing acts, the missing money, started making sense. It wasn't just random quirks or mistakes. They were under the influence. The weird behavior, the way they avoided tasks, and the strange energy when they returned from the bathroom suddenly had an explanation. They were using drugs at work, and it was affecting their performance in ways that no one had fully understood. It was a gut-wrenching realization. I didn't want to believe it at first, but there was no denying it anymore. The person I had been working alongside was struggling with a drug addiction, and it was getting worse. I had to make a decision, one that could change everything. I knew I couldn't just ignore what I had discovered. I felt this heavy weight on my chest, torn between what I knew I had to do and the fear of the consequences. Confronting them felt like a risk. I wasn't sure how they would react, or if it would even make a difference. Part of me considered staying silent, but that didn't sit right with me. Keeping quiet would mean putting the rest of the team in danger, letting the behavior continue unchecked. I knew I had to tell someone, but telling my coworker directly wasn't going to solve anything. In the end, I realized that I had to do what was best for the team and the company. This wasn't just about one person's problem, it was about the bigger picture, how their actions were affecting everyone around them. So I decided to go straight to the boss, hoping that by doing so, I'd make the right choice. I grabbed a sticky note and started writing. My hand was shaky, and I found myself questioning if I was doing the right thing, but I pushed through. I taped the Xanax pill I had found to the note, knowing it was a crucial piece of evidence. I wrote as clearly as I could, explaining that I had found the drug in the bathroom and that my coworker had gone in just before me. I didn't want to make accusations without proof, so I just stated the facts, hoping it would be enough for them to take action. As soon as I finished the note, I stood there for a moment, looking at it. The weight of the decision hit me hard. This wasn't just a small thing, it was about someone's job, and maybe even their future. I had no idea what would happen next. Would I be blamed for getting someone fired? Would my coworker find out it was me and retaliate? Those thoughts raced through my mind, but in the end, I knew I had to trust my instincts. I had seen the signs for too long, and I couldn't just stand by and let it continue. I walked over to my boss's desk and slipped the note under the edge of his computer screen. It felt like the longest few seconds of my life, but I had done it. I had spoken up. With a deep breath, I turned and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. It didn't take long for my boss to find the note. I could see it in his eyes as he read it, and I knew that he was already aware of what was going on. He'd been suspicious of my coworker's behavior for a while, and now he had the evidence to act on it. I didn't stick around to see what happened next, but I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. I had done what I felt was right, even if it was going to cost someone their job. When my boss sat down with my coworker, things moved fast. The conversation didn't take long, and before I knew it, the truth came out. They admitted to using drugs at work, and everything crashed down around them in an instant. The boss didn't hesitate. They were fired, right then and there. No second chances. It all happened so quickly, and I couldn't shake the feeling of how abrupt it was. In that moment, I felt a deep sense of unease. Part of me wanted to feel relieved, like I had done the right thing, but the reality of the situation hit me hard. I had just been the one to cause this person's job to be taken away. Even though I knew their behavior was damaging to the team, and they were putting the company at risk, it didn't make the outcome any easier to swallow. I kept thinking about the resources the company offered for mental health and addiction recovery. I thought that maybe, just maybe, they would get a second chance, that they could use those resources to get help. But because it had all gone down at work, there was no room for forgiveness. It was out of my hands now. The guilt started to creep in. I questioned myself over and over again. Was this really the only way? Did I do the right thing? Could I have handled it differently? There were so many unknowns. I had acted on impulse, thinking it was the best way to protect the team and the company. But now I was left with this weight on my shoulders. Could I have gone to the coworker first? Tried to talk to them privately? I thought about the personal connection we had, how we had worked side by side for so long. Could I have tried harder to help them without exposing them in such a public way? But in my heart, I knew that there had been no other choice. I had seen the signs. I had witnessed the effect their behavior was having on the team. The missing money, the mistakes with customers, it was getting worse. It wasn't just affecting them, it was affecting everyone around them. I knew I had done what I felt was necessary, even if it didn't feel good in the moment. The team had to come first, and at the end of the day, I couldn't just look the other way. Even so, the guilt didn't vanish overnight. I wrestled with it for days after everything went down. The moment I handed that note over, I knew things would never be the same. What hurt the most was knowing that the consequences of this decision might follow my coworker long after they left. But I kept reminding myself that the hardest thing in this whole situation was the truth. They needed help, but they weren't going to get it by staying in a place where their addiction could continue to hurt others. A year went by, and life moved on. I didn't hear much from my former coworker, and to be honest, I had no idea what had happened to them after they were let go. I'd spent a lot of time thinking about them, hoping that they were getting the help they needed, but I never expected to see them again, especially not in the store. Then one day, out of the blue, they walked through the door. I barely recognized them at first. Physically, they looked so different. Their face was brighter, their energy was completely different. It was like they had shed this weight that I hadn't even realized they were carrying before. They looked happy, healthy, and genuinely at peace with themselves. They came up to me with a smile, and I couldn't help but smile back, even though I was still processing everything. They told me they were 6 months sober. It took me a second to absorb what they were saying. 6 months. After everything that had happened, I didn't think I'd ever hear that from them. They told me that, after being fired, they had checked into rehab. They admitted that losing their job had been a major wake-up call. It was the slap in the face they needed to really face the reality of their addiction and the destruction it was causing to their life. What really surprised me was hearing that being fired wasn't the first time they'd lost a job because of their drug use. That made everything click for me. It wasn't just about what happened at work. It was a pattern they had been struggling with for a long time. But this time, they said, things were different. They had finally decided to get clean, and this time, they were doing it for themselves. They weren't just putting on a front for others, they were ready to take control of their life. They had a new job now, one that supported their recovery. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and it gave them the structure and support they needed. They told me how much it meant to them, how much they appreciated finally having a place that helped them stay sober. Hearing them talk about it, I could see the genuine happiness in their eyes. It was a side of them I hadn't seen before, and I couldn't help but feel proud. I felt proud of them for turning things around, for taking responsibility, and fighting for a better life. To be honest, it wasn't easy to process all of this. I had been so focused on the aftermath of the situation that I never expected it to have this kind of outcome. I had been the one to expose their behavior, to be the one who got them fired. But seeing them now, I realized that sometimes the hardest moments are the ones that push people to grow. They were finally in control of their future, something they hadn't had in a long time, and it felt like everything had come full circle. It wasn't easy to get to this point, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy for them moving forward. But I felt relief. Relief that they were getting the help they needed, and that they were truly starting to heal. I couldn't have asked for a better outcome, even if I hadn't expected it. Even now, no one knows it was me who left that note. It's been a secret I've carried with me, and honestly, I've kept it that way on purpose. I didn't want to make things worse or cause any more drama at work. It was already a difficult situation, and I figured the less people knew, the less they would judge or gossip. I wasn't in it for recognition, and I didn't want anyone thinking I was out to make a big spectacle of it. So I've kept quiet about what really happened. But there are times when I can't help but wonder, did I do the right thing? Was I justified in taking that step, or should I have just kept my head down and let things play out on their own? It's not like I had any guidance in that moment. I was doing what I thought was best, what I thought would help the team and protect us from the consequences of my coworkers' actions. But sometimes, I wonder if I made the right choice, if I should have tried a different approach. Looking back, though, I can't help but feel that exposing the addiction did more good than harm. It wasn't just about getting them fired. It was about giving them the chance to face their problems head-on. Maybe, without that push, they wouldn't have sought the help they needed. Maybe they would have continued down the same path, and who knows where that would have led. By exposing what was happening, I forced a moment of clarity, not just for the team, but for my coworker too. It wasn't easy to think of it like that, but as time has passed, I've come to see that sometimes tough decisions are necessary. We all have our struggles. But when those struggles start affecting the people around us, we can't just turn a blind eye. And while I'll never know for sure, I do think that note, that one action, could have saved my coworker's life. If they hadn't gotten caught, who knows if they would have ever taken that step to get clean and turn their life around. Maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't have. But now, all I can do is hope that I made the right call. This story wasn't easy for me to share, but I hope it gives you some perspective on the tough decisions we sometimes face. Life isn't always black and white. And there are moments when we have to choose between doing the right thing and protecting someone, even when it's uncomfortable. It wasn't an easy choice, and I've questioned myself plenty of times. But deep down, I believe it was necessary, not just for the team, but for my coworker too. Sometimes, doing the right thing isn't the easiest path, but it's the one that can make the biggest difference. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between doing the right thing and protecting someone? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Did you make the same choice I did, or did you go down a different path? I'm really curious to know your thoughts and if you think I made the right decision or not. Thanks for taking the time to listen to my story. Remember, sometimes doing the hard thing is the thing that can change a life for the better.